Welcome. Welcome, Jay. Welcome, Paul. Paul 1 and Paul 2, Wilson and Orlick. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. All right, so if people have just 30 more seconds, put your name and your role in the chat, or you can share a professional learning experience that was powerful, because that is what we are going to focus on today. So we will get started. It's good to start on time and model starting on time, right? If you don't start on time, then people just trickle in whenever. I just wanted to say hello, thank you. First of all, a big thank you to ASA. Thank you, Jim Baldwin, Tammy Gibbons, and Jenna Sebald for having me here today. And thank you to all of you. I know you're busy. I know you're tired. This has been a tiring year. I know there's a lot of other ASA workshops that you can go to. So thank you for joining me and giving me an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Some of you you don't recognize my face, but you might recognize my name. My name is Jen David Lang. You might know me from the Main Idea. Just a bit of back, I started out teaching in that special place we call middle school many years ago, oddly, both English and math. I'm a strange person. And then fast forward many years later, after I got my principal's license, I learned that I liked supporting leaders more. So I've had different roles supporting leaders, one of which was to start the Main Idea, and that's how you might know me. So once a month, I summarize an education or leadership book for thousands of leaders all over the country. And then I include some PD ideas at the end. And ASA generously provides a subscription to this for all of its members. So if you're a member of ASA, you get a membership to the Main Idea for free, and Jenna sends it out to all of you. And so you get one book summary from me a month. And then if that's not a topic you're currently working on, you also have a password. You can go into my archives. I have over 140 book summaries and PD ideas, and you can search by topic as well as author or book title or for whatever you're looking for. So I am very happy to be here today. So we will get into what we're doing here. Give me 1 second. So this is crafting professional learning that sticks. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we are doing today. So this is the agenda, and it doesn't look sexy at all. There's nothing sexy about this particular slide, but I promise you that I may be saving you thousands of dollars if you stay through to the end by giving you some really concrete tools to plan your own professional learning, so you don't have to hire those, fancy consultants to come in, and you can actually do professional learning that's even more engaging and more impactful than what they would do. And I do have a few slides, but this is going to be super interactive. So, we ask our students and we ask our teachers to be interactive when we share new learning. So why should we have a bunch of leaders sit around? So if you're hoping for a webinar, this is not a webinar, but you will walk away with more learning, I promise you, and some concrete ideas, as well as 2 tools that you can take back and you can use immediately. So, so to get started, I have a quote here. Did anybody read the Distance Learning Playbook? That was very popular last year. And so in this book, Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry, and colleagues said, if there ever was a time to invest in the learning of adults, it is now. So if I could ask you, please, don't leave me hanging in the chat. Take a moment and what do you think about this? I mean, you're here today. What do you think about now as the time to invest in the learning of adults? And I'm very good with online wait time, so I'm just going to shut up and give people a moment. Great. Dr. Love makes a great point that yes, work on professional learning and emotional support too. I agree completely. I love that. So Rhonda says, everyone works hard. Let's get them to work smarter. Exactly. Everyone's really tired, so why not get them to work smarter? Perfect time. Yes, Andrea, lots of new tech tools that need support. Absolutely. Can't just dump them on staff. Need some good professional learning. And somebody just said investing in, I think it was Kelsey, investing in our students, in our teachers means investing in our students. And boy, do we need to invest in our students now. Yes. If the learning is good for us as leaders, it's going to be good for the other people in the building. Yeah, one great professional learning idea. You've gone through a crazy year, as Matt says. What positive things can we take away from it? That would be a great professional learning session. Yep. Yeah, we have learned a lot through this pandemic, Cassie says, right? We've learned to think outside of the box. Let's capitalize on that. People are really willing to do some learning and do things differently now that they had to more than ever before. That's a really great point. And yes, changing practices has to do with changing mindsets. And boy, did we all have a big change in mindsets. Yeah, I mean, I would say three things. One, first of all, it's inspiring to learn, right? It's sort of teachers are burning out, they're leaving the profession, retiring early. They need a reminder of why they got here. So yes, so do some professional learning to inspire them. It's connecting. Do professional learning where we bring our teachers together. They haven't really been together, so bring them together in doing meaningful learning activities. And then the third thing is, frankly, it's necessary. If we learned anything during the pandemic, it showed that the leaders and the teachers in the building willing to learn, those were the ones who survived. The pandemic has shown us that professional learning is absolutely necessary. So to begin, I'm wondering if we can, in the chat, name all of the ways that the leaders in your school engage in professional learning. Any way that you can think of, just like a big brainstorm, if you could put it in the chat. So for example, book studies, right? Elizabeth, professional reading. Molly, webinars, right? We're doing a lot more online than we've ever done before. Absolutely. Some people don't see PLC meetings as PD, but it absolutely is. Several people said PLCs, peer-to-peer classroom observations. I love it. My pandemic puppy is barking, sorry, in the background. Lots of people have PLCs. That's great. I personally think that's the best form of professional learning. So hats off to the people doing PLCs and seeing that as the best professional learning. Summer Academy, book studies. I don't know what CESA is. Does anyone want to unmute and tell me what that is?
Cooperative Educational Service Agency. So there's 12, I think 12 of them in the state.
Fantastic. So they're providing opportunities?
Regional, yes.
Regional opportunities. Fantastic. Yeah, I love how a lot of people are capitalizing on this time and doing online learning, saving us a lot of commuting. I imagine in Wisconsin, that's tough for you. Even here in New York City, where principals only had to go a few blocks to do professional learning, they weren't doing it. But yeah, there's so many ways to do professional learning that we might not even think of. Teachers getting together to plan a lesson. That's one of my favorite ways of professional learning, right? Getting feedback from students, as someone mentioned earlier, hearing from their perspective. Certainly Twitter, social media, so many great articles being shared. Coaching, right? Principals or instructional leaders doing coaching, that's professional learning too. Conducting action research, the list goes on and on. Zoom networking with colleagues, Voxer groups, those are great for book learning. So Linda Darling Hammond, she did some research out of Stanford with colleagues on the components of highly effective professional learning, and she found that there were 7 components. They are, one, content focus, right? That you're really focusing on the content that teachers need. They're active. Teachers are not empty vessels to be filled, just like our students aren't empty vessels. Collaborative, we were meant to learn around the campfire. We were not meant to learn just isolated by ourselves. We provide teachers with models of what does effective practice look like, rather than talking about classroom management or even just reading, showing videos, bringing teachers into classrooms of teachers who do it well. And then certainly coaching and support and feedback, right? We give our teachers opportunities to try and try again, get some feedback, get some support, and then amend what they're doing. And then finally is the sustained duration. It's harder to get a lot out of just a one-time sit and get like today. If I were to follow up in a few months or a few weeks, then you all might get more out of this. So if you think back to the professional learning experiences you shared at the beginning of today in the chat, just reflect for a moment and think about, of these 7 elements, which were the ones that were a part of your powerful experience. Just take a moment to take a look. So today we're going to talk about the professional learning workshop that you can run at your school. And done well, it should include several of these elements here. And I'm going to introduce 2 tools that you can take back with you. I'm going to introduce one now and one at the end. So the first tool is the 4A learning sequence for adult learning. I love this tool. I use it all the time. I used it today to plan today's session, and I will explain how. So when you're leading a session, you want to start with an anchor. You want to connect today's learning with prior knowledge. Again, one of the biggest mistakes we make with adults, with our teachers, is we run sessions as if they're empty vessels, and they're not. They have a ton of experience. So in the same way, so I did 2 things as an anchor for today. I asked you to think of a professional learning experience that was powerful. And I also just asked you to brainstorm all the ways adults are doing professional learning in your buildings, because no one has walked into today's workshop having done nothing on the topic of professional learning, right? The second component of the 4A sequence that makes for a powerful workshop is to add. This is when you're going to add new content for your learners. So that could be anything from an article, a TED Talk, a website you want to introduce to teachers, a new tech tool, Jamboard, Padlet, all the ones that were popular this year. And if you want to go even further, you can provide several different types of content that's differentiated, since you have some teachers who are newer and some who are more experienced. So right now, this tool that I'm sharing with you, this is an example of my ad. I am adding new content for you. And it's also the kind of thing that you can get from the main idea, where I am giving you a lot of content each month that you could use for the ad part of your PBs. And you can reach out to me if you want help with any of that, finding the content that you're looking for. The third part is the apply, right? We want our teachers, our participants, to grapple with the new content. A teacher would never go into a class wanting to teach a poem or an algebra problem and just sort of leave it out there, right? They would think about, how do I want the students to grapple with this new content? And so for your participants, how do I want the participants to grapple with this new content? And today we are going to collaboratively plan a mock professional learning session using these 4 A's. So that's going to be our apply. And then finally, away. What does it matter if all of this incredible learning happens within this hour of this workshop and you don't do anything with it? So you want to be able to connect the session to the actual work. And if people are scribbling furiously, don't worry, I'm going to email you this 4A learning sequence. I should have said that earlier. I apologize. But yeah, so how are we going to take this away? So you might have teachers come in, and during the session, they might actually design a lesson aim that they would use. Or you might have teachers pair up and plan a time where they're going to observe each other, trying out the new strategy that you introduced in the session. Does anybody have any questions so far? And I guess you can just and share it if you have a question. Jenna, let me know if anybody is signaling.
Nope, nobody so far.
Nobody, okay. I've learned a better thing to say is, what question do you have? Not, do you have any questions? What questions does anybody have, or comments? Can you raise your hand if you have seen this before? Has anybody seen this 4A sequence before? Anyone? Is this? No, so it's pretty new for people. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Maybe I'm not wasting your time. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to collaboratively plan a mock session on improving student engagement. So imagine you go back in September, right? We know student engagement is important. We've lost a lot of students, both, actually lost them and also in terms of their engagement. So let's say you want to do a workshop for your teachers on how they can improve their student engagement. They're doing a good job, but you want them to do an even better job. So I'm going to ask for your interaction here. So the first question is, how could we anchor, the first A, this session in teachers' experience with student engagement? So what might you do for the A if you're planning a workshop on student engagement? Take your time. Fantastic. Kelsey says, tell me about a time you knew students were engaged, right? I like that. It's not just were students engaged, but you knew. That adds an extra twist. I love that. A Padlet, a big brainstorm, right? With top engagement, student engagement go-tos you've tried. Share, yeah, come to the session with an engaging lesson you already teach, right? I think that's great. Think back to a time when you had the highest level of engagement in your class from Laura Love. Yep, or do it in pairs, then more people get to talk. Ask teachers to share a great example. Yeah. And I love this one from Beth. I won't even try to pronounce the last name, Beth. An example of when you were in the zone, right? When you were really learning. When was the last time you were really engaged in your learning? Great, so that's a perfect, those are all perfect examples of an anchor. So now you want to add new learning to the teachers. They come with lots of ideas, they have great ideas, but you want to move them to the next level. So what might you do to add new content about student engagement? And you see how using wait time on Zoom is helpful, just like in person. That's great. Use a video students explaining what engages them. I like that. Hear from the students themselves, right? I really like when the teacher makes learning relevant to my own life and gives real examples. Great idea. Yep, an article or research about student engagement. Again, from the main idea, I've got a lot that you can use. I have a couple of book summaries about student engagement. I think one by Robert Marzano, the other one by Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry. During the pandemic, I had a page, 30 strategies to engage learners on Zoom. So yeah, relevant data from Hattie, fantastic. I always love John Hattie. What does he say about what works for student engagement? An article with student engagement ideas based on grade level. I like that. So it's kind of the differentiation, maybe different ideas for different grade levels. Great. So there's lots of ideas for adding new, oh, I love this, adding new content. So Beth says, share 2 videos from Research for Better Teaching. That's out here in Massachusetts, out east. What did the teacher do? Name it, chart it, make a plan for it. Fantastic. Yep. So lots of ways to share new learning so the teachers can move up a level. So then there's the apply part. So what could you do to get the teachers to actually grapple with whatever content you gave them? I love that. Gary shared that Marzano says, have students track their effort and preparation. That would be great new content to share with teachers. And what might that look like? Give them some templates. What does it look like to track your effort and preparation? So how could you get teachers to apply their learning? Great. So Cassie says incorporate the new learning into a lesson. Yeah, they could take a lesson that they were going to teach for tomorrow and now add something new based on what you did today. Ask them to choose two and jot an action plan. Yep, that might be connected a little bit to the away, right? To create an action plan. But Matt said the same thing, take a lesson they use and think about how they would change it based on the new ideas. Visit each other's classrooms as they put the new content into practice and use feedback. Again, it might bleed over into the away. It doesn't really matter. The idea is that you have these components. Oh, I like this. Becky has talk through a lesson with a partner if there isn't actually time to plan a full lesson. So they could just in pairs talk out loud how they might increase engagement throughout the different parts of the lesson. Andrea's got peer observations, teaching others in the building about their learning. Oh, that's a cool idea. Have students teach each other about their learning. That's certainly a way to boost engagement. Yeah, I think a great apply activity is always to have teachers work in pairs or to work in groups, right? Discuss in small groups. Discussing transfer. Transfer does have a lot to do with engagement. Yeah, and it can be, you know, if you're giving them a reading, you could simply ask, what's compelling about the reading? You know, what spoke to you? What would you like to try? You know, of the 30 ideas to increase engagement, what are two that you've already used? What are two you want to try? And which two do you find absolutely offensive and horrendous you would never use? You know, that's applying is simply grappling with the material, and it can be simply a reading and a discussion of the reading. It doesn't have to be something that's so fancy. And then the final question, and I think some of your answers already tapped into this, is away. How can we have teachers plan for improved student engagement after today? So somebody said you could set up some peer observations, which it sounds like some of you already do. What else for what you could do for after today? Share impact at a future meeting. I love that. Planning your professional learning in pairs is fantastic. We're introducing all this today, and next time we're going to report back. That's a great way. I love that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Network with colleagues to think about how they're planning to increase engagement. Yeah, you could have a professional learning workshop, and then it could move over to the PLCs, and maybe the PLCs take it from there. That's in a way. Plan a lesson and then survey students to see if they actually are engaged. That's a fantastic way. I really love that. Yep, somebody else, Cassie said, yeah, revisit this during PLCs. You can introduce something to your full staff faculty, and then they can work on it in PLCs. Plan to come back and share video. Yeah, give them homework, right? So next time we're going to actually share some videos of you teaching lessons where you felt like you boosted engagement. Or it could be something else, right? It could be sharing student work with each other after an engaging lesson. This was the student work that we produced. Let's look at that at a PLC, like Sarah says. Yeah, at a PLC, talk about what was successful. Yeah, and I would argue what was successful and what you might want to improve. So yeah, so the one-time sit and get workshop can just be a launch pad for something that lives in the PLCs for much longer time. Beth says, share a week's worth of lesson plans with a peer. I love that, with the intentional addition of engagement highlighted. Yeah, so you could show what it is that you added. I love that. And then plan a time for reflection after to see how it worked and how to improve it the next time. You might even argue, right, to plan a couple of lessons. You try it once, you get some feedback from a peer, and then you try it again, because that goes back to what the research says about feedback, support, and refinement. And again, it's easier these days, very easy to videotape a segment of your lesson and to share that later. So these are all great ideas. Does anybody have any larger comments about this? And obviously, Often when I do workshops, I do them so that you wear two hats. One is your hat, you all are participants now, maybe the 4A template is something new to you, but I'm also giving you strategies. You could introduce this to your leadership team, your instructional coaches, and you could just do this very activity that I'm doing here with you, where we go step by step, anchor, add, apply, away for a mock PD session or a real one that your school is going to do. And you can take this actual workshop with you. So what we are going to do, so that was the apply section. And then for a little bit of the away, we're going to break you into groups of 4 and give you 10 minutes. And at a minimum, you can do one person. If there's time for more than one, that's great. And we're going to copy these. Jenna, if you could put these instructions. Oh, you already did. She's 4 steps ahead of me. Thank you. You're just going to briefly introduce yourself. One person, pick a volunteer, one person, and introduce yourself. Share what grade level, what your role is, and then take one professional learning workshop idea that you have. And it might be something for the future, or maybe it's something you already did that you want to work on to refine. And then that volunteer is going to share concretely what they might do for the anchor, add, apply, and away steps. And that's a lot on the spot. You don't have to think of all of it. You might just have a few ideas. You don't have to hit all 4 of the A's. And then that presenting person will be quiet. And the other 3 people share, brainstorm. What else might this person do? Oh, this is a workshop on differentiating, personalizing instruction. They also might try this for the anchor, or they might try this for the add, or use this resource for the add. So the other 3 people will brainstorm, and then you can decide whether you want to go to a second person if you have time. But we're going to take a good 10 minutes, and don't go away. When you come back, I'm going to share the second tool, which is about the part of professional learning that is least likely to be done in most schools. So first, I'll see if there are any questions, and then we will break into groups. Does anybody have any questions? So it looks like we have 18 people. Maybe, Jenna, let's do 4 groups and see. No questions about this? All right, it's fun. It's really great to have someone present an idea and then have everyone share and give their own ideas. You will walk away. If it's going to be a professional learning session you're doing in the future, you will walk away with ideas. So should we start now and give it 10 minutes? Yes? Okay, so let's take 10 minutes and we will see you back here. Great. Well, thanks for trying that experience. Can you raise, how many people were you able to get through in your group? We got through 1. In other groups, can you just show hands? 1, 2, 0. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, and I'm wondering if just a couple of people can unmute and tell us what is the professional learning workshop that the person presented. It could be you or someone else. Just what was the topic?
Our group talked about equitable teaching practices.
Big one, very big topic, I'm sure, for this fall for a lot of people. Other people, what topics were presented?
We talked about what is essential and essential standards and creating professional development around that.
Yes, boy, we have a lot of learning gaps and issues to deal with this year. So if you can get your teachers to pull out power standards, that's a fantastic professional learning idea to use for the fall. And how was the experience with the group, Elizabeth? Was it a good opportunity to brainstorm? How was that experience?
Yeah, I think we all had learned some things and thought about some things and have some new ideas and to go forth. So
fantastic.
I think there's still a lot of work to do, but
okay, good. And one more person share, and then we'll move on to the second tool. What'd you do in your group? What was the topic?
Okay, I'll share. We talked about collaborative classroom visits for administrative teams and using the data to inform professional learning for staff and getting feedback from staff using some feedback processes.
So was this a professional learning session for that leadership team for how to do
Yeah.
this? Oh,
Yep.
great. Yeah. Fantastic. Obviously the 4As works with teachers, works with leaders. Love it. That's great. Good. Well, I hope this tool is useful. I'm going to move on to the second tool, Where of Time. Does anybody know what is the most neglected aspect of professional learning? The thing we all forget to do? You can just unmute and chime in if you have any thoughts.
Checking back
Follow-up or
afterwards.
sustainability?
Follow up. Yep. It's connected to that. Yep. And what was the other one someone said? I think
I just said checking back in afterwards, or like having that time to process and reflect.
checking back. Yep. Yeah. It's actually evaluating the impact. Tom Gusky writes a lot about this, right? We do a lot of PD, right? You know, also asked me to come in, like, how do we know this made any difference, right? And if you think about what do we ask our teachers to do? We ask them to backwards plan. You've heard that term, right? Don't just plan a unit, today's lesson, tomorrow. No, start with the assessment and plan backwards, right? So we should be doing the same thing when we do professional learning. I really think instead of the 4 A's, I was going to create my own template and make it the 5 A's, and the 5th A is assess. So how do you assess whether it was worth it? Was it worth the $10,000 you paid that fancy consultant? Was it worth your time to come to this workshop today? And then, you know, was it worth it? So, so I have a tool to help you plan for assessing how you evaluate it. And I would encourage you, if you really do the 4 A's, plan for how you're going to evaluate it before you even get in front of your teachers or your leadership team. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first share that tool with you, and we're going to do a silent read of the tool where in just a moment, not yet, Jenna's going to include a link to the tool. She already did. Yes, that's always a mistake, right? You share the handout before you explain it, and then the students don't listen to you. No worries, my fault. We're going to silently read this for 4 minutes just to take it in. And this is a great thing to do with your staff. Instead of asking people to read a chapter or read one of my book summaries ahead of time, do a live read. That way, you know, everyone's on the same page. So we're just going to, it's 2:46. We're going to take to 2:50 to just take a look at this document, and then we're going to chat about it. So the link is in the chat. So I guess it's not really a full page, just a column. So thumbs up if you are able to get through it. Great. That's always a good idea. Instead of thumbs up if you need more time, because teachers don't want to tell you that they're slow readers and they need more time. So I always ask who's done with it. So I was going to use it to talk about this session today, looking at number 1 and 2, but I'm just curious, what do you notice? What stuck out for you? And we're a small enough group. If you would unmute and share, that would be great. But yeah, Sarah, do you want to talk more about what you wrote in the chat?
Yes, I think when we have all these amazing professional learning opportunities, and we don't have enough of that follow through. We just, sometimes we have the check-ins for how it's, being brought out into the classroom, and then we talk about in PLC, but the idea of how it actually went and the questions, I like the sort of provocative questions, but also it'd be very interesting to see what my version of how it went versus the teacher version of how it went. I think that would be very, very telling for us and help us adjust our practices moving forward.
I think every leader has made that mistake of we just think, oh, our impression, oh, it was engaging. Yeah, especially if we're running it ourselves. Boy, do we think it was engaging. But yes, great point, Sarah. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else stick out to people about this document?
One of the ways that we've incorporated in the district that I'm in, and in my particular building, we've incorporated the evaluation piece is through Effective Educator. So we have a school-wide SLO and a school-wide PPG, and part of that is that teachers are loading in student work as evidence of practice, plus their own like lesson planning, unit planning as evidence of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So our focus is on increasing students' abilities to read complex text. And so we have found that it's very effective when everyone in the building is working on the same SLO and the same PPG, but it also impacts like their learning and kids learning at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it gets to the level 5, right? The level of student learning. But, you know, this is interesting. Like we all think, oh, you know, participants' reactions, right? Throw them out. But actually, you know, Tom Gussey, he's not saying that. He's saying they're all valid, right? I mean, if participants are bored to death and they're sitting there and being talked at, then that's obviously going to affect the professional learning. So yeah, so it is valid to examine participants' reactions, but also look at these other levels, right? So it's not enough to just do that. If there's no organizational support for whatever it is that you're doing the professional learning on, this may all fall flat. You know, you're doing professional learning on some technological tool and then you don't purchase it for the teachers, forget about it, right? So I think he's helping us expand our idea of 5 different levels of participation. And if you notice, each of these have a question, how, and each of them has a how you do that, whether it's surveys or like Elizabeth was saying, you know, looking at student work or student learning. But there's a how for each of these 5 items. Any other takeaways from this? Just unmute and share.
So just a couple of quick ideas. So one of them, like, it's just related to Hattie's work with the effect size and like, how do we know our impact? Like really, what's the impact if we don't have an assessment on the back end? We have no idea. And also kind of relates to RTI as a systematic, you know, making sure we have like formative assessments, summative assessments built in. We have data that then we can like measure. So again, if we have nothing to measure, we have no idea, you know, what went well or what didn't.
Yeah.
So again, when we present, we need some kind of like data measurement. You know,
Yeah.
So.
And to plan that from the start, really to plan that from the start is what's really tough to do. Anybody have a last comment as I leave you with this? Anybody have a last comment about this one pager? How they might use it? Well, I just wanted to say that feel free after today, you can reach out to me with questions if you're planning professional learning for your school. If you want ideas for the ad part of the 4 A's, I love professional learning. It's my favorite topic. And if I can help you navigate through and find old book summaries or one-pagers that I've written, you know, let me know. And you can search on my website by topic. You all have the password. And I also run online mastermind groups, which are groups of 8 to 12 leaders across the country. And this is the kind of professional learning we do. We read one-pagers, we discuss, we hear what each other is doing. If that's something you're interested in, you could take a look at that as well. But I really appreciate also giving me this chance and providing the subscriptions for the main idea to all of you. And really, if there's anything that I can do to help, I am happy to help. And if you want to unmute. Oh, and I will, in the spirit of evaluating the impact, when I send out the 2 tools from today, I will also send a very simple survey just asking what worked well from today and what could be better. I always want to improve, so I would appreciate if you took 30 seconds. And if you want to unmute and say goodbye or anything, thank you all for your time. I know you've got busy days, so feel free to go ahead and go back. But thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.